Hey there, I just wanted to jump in before we start this episode and let you know that this episode does contain a very sensitive topic, and we do dive into some medical details that might be uncomfortable for some audiences. So, listener discretion is advised. Hello, hello. Welcome back to the show for another episode of Digital Business Evolution. We've got a special guest here today. We've got Mike.
Hey, guys.
What's up, Mike? So, this one is a heavier episode. And so I have Mike on this one, not just for a mic drop where he's going to come in and give you the golden nuggets and the 7 steps, but we're actually coming in to share our story of what has been going on personally behind the scenes. And I know I've alluded to it a little bit via email and through Instagram, but it's been a bit cryptic and I haven't shared exactly what's going on. We've gotten some guesses from people in the DMs. So we're here today just to share our story and both perspectives of what has been going on so that we can hopefully help bring awareness to what it was and also make sure that anyone out there isn't feeling alone who might be going through something similar or who's ever gone through something in their life. I know for me, there's also been a very heavy feeling of Instagram versus reality, because what I've been sharing on Instagram isn't necessarily what's been going on behind the scenes. And that's not to say I've been faking it or manipulating. I've actually just been using some old content, repurposing and finding ways to consistently show up without actually having to show up. So really grateful that Mike is here. And I will also say this episode, as I said, is a little heavy. It is definitely one that could cause some triggers. So I will tell you right now, there is a trigger warning here. And I apologize if it does trigger anything in you. But again, we feel it's really important for us to share, as it is part of our story. It's part of our healing. It's part of our business. It's part of our life. And because you are such a big part of our life, it only makes sense that we share, not because we feel we have to, but because we want to. All right. So, oh man, I can't promise that I'm not going to cry. I didn't think I would. I've been able to say it recently without crying, but on the past couple months, for about 6 months, the team and I have been working really, really hard on getting ready for our launch of Empower, which was back in September. And with that launch, we do a big virtual event that lasts 12 days. And there's basically 12 days of live trainings, 3 big kahuna trainings. It's called Digital Business Evolution Live. Maybe you have come to it. And we work for months on this. And we were so excited to put this out. So on September 15th, our first day of the lives kicked off and it was incredible. It's like this big 2-hour training. We've got the microphones, Mike's behind the scenes with his ring light and his, I don't know, all the cameraman stuff behind the scenes. And so we kicked off on September 15th. September 16th, which was a Friday, I came in and did one of my bonus trainings, which happens inside the Facebook group. And that also is like an hour-and-a-half training and flip chart paper. And like my teacher geek is showing big time and I'm having the best time ever. And then Saturday morning on September 17th, I woke up to an immense amount of blood. I had been having some irregular bleeding. So on that Friday, the day before, I had called an OB and I had made an appointment for the upcoming Monday. And she had told me the protocol was if you bleed through in under an hour, then you have to go to the ER. So, and I apologize for the graphicness of this, but I think it's important. So on Friday, I was lasting a couple hours, but it was certainly not normal. And I knew that it wasn't normal. And Saturday morning when I woke up, I had bled through even my clothing. So I changed and we went to go take Montana out for a walk. And by the time we got outside, I mean, what would you say, 15 minutes?
Yeah, definitely. It was 15 minutes and you already had known that there was, something wrong. And you looked at me and you said, we have to go to the ER. And it was, it was like, okay,
yeah,
let's go. And at that point, we weren't tremendously worried.
No,
it was just like, do you feel faint? Are you cold? All right, let's go. And we didn't rush. We took our time getting there.
We actually picked a hospital that we wanted to go to over the one that was closer to us.
Yeah.
So we went to the hospital, went to the ER. And of course, when we got there, they started to do just traditional blood work and urine tests and stuff. And I don't know, maybe an hour later, they came into the room to let me know, first and foremost, that we were 5.5 weeks pregnant, which we didn't know. I intuitively knew that I was pregnant, but I had not taken a test. Because I didn't need to. There wasn't signs that I needed to. I thought I had gotten my period, but it turns out it was, obviously different blood for a different reason. It just happened to be on like the right day. So I hadn't taken a test. So we first find out we're 5.5 weeks pregnant. And that was a shocker. I don't know what that felt like for you when the doctor came in and said that. I don't know how shocked you were.
So it wasn't that I was shocked because of the things that you had shared with me over the last couple of weeks leading up to it. And you had shared with me that intuitively and physically, you kind of thought you were, right. Yeah. And just a little backstory for those that like don't know us personally. The babies it's always been a conversation, but we've always been like, no, we love the life and freedom that we have, and we don't want to change anything right now. And you can have everything with kids. We're aware of that, but it was just a decision that we had kind of made. And we kind of were super optimistic when we had made the decision to try. And it wasn't like try, it was kind of like, hey, if this happens, it happens. And it happened. In hindsight, it happened very quickly, right?
Yeah.
1 month.
The first try.
So,
and by try, like we weren't tracking anything.
Right. So going back to your question, what was my perspective? It was, I didn't expect to feel the emotions that I felt when the doctor came in and told us that, because at that point we knew that something was wrong.
Yeah.
And that most likely it was, at the very least, I think what we were thinking at that time is that we were miscarrying.
Yeah.
Right. And I was surprised. I will say I was pleasantly surprised with the emotions that I felt. And it's like when you talk to somebody, and those of you who have kids understand this, and those of you that don't, I'm sure you've had somebody say this to you. You don't understand the feeling until you have the child, and it's the most unbelievable feeling. It changes everything, and you can't understand that until you go through it. So for me, it was an unexpected emotion. And again, I was very happy with the emotion that I felt, because I was like, okay, we used to think we were like broken.
Yeah.
Like we didn't want to have kids. Like, what's wrong with us? Why is everybody so obsessed with having kids? And we're kind of like, I don't get it. I don't have a farm. What do I need kids for? So other people's kids are great. I can hand them back. But yeah, so for me, the emotion was, it was instant. I remember both of us, like, we definitely welled up, and I think it was the combination of the fact that, wow, we're pregnant, and also what's happening.
Yeah.
And that was when the heaviness definitely started at that point.
Yeah. And I don't know if it was just my perception, but the way that the doctor told us, I felt an undertone and almost like a tilted, comforting head nod from her of like, and it's not viable. So it was almost for me like a very much at peace, like, okay, there wasn't like this roller coaster of like, whoa, this is exciting and happening. It was kind of like, I'm at peace with knowing it's not going to happen, because I almost didn't have that moment to feel into that. But that wasn't necessarily the case. It was still, okay, we think you're miscarrying, so we're going to do some further testing, and we don't need to get into what they did, but yeah, we did some further testing. And after that, they came back, and it was a type of ultrasound, and they said, we can't find the baby, we can't find the sac, we can't find any resemblance of what we should be seeing. And so we think it's an ectopic pregnancy. So for someone who doesn't know what an ectopic pregnancy is.
Sorry to cut you off, but like, I didn't know what that, I had heard of that.
Sure.
And I knew that it was a pregnancy outside the uterus, the womb.
Sure.
But I didn't know the extent of what that meant.
Right.
And did you?
Well, I only did because my mom had one, which is super rare. So 2 months before my mom got pregnant with me, she had an ectopic pregnancy. And so I have known about it my whole life because she's told me about it. But yes, other than that, I've never met anyone who's had one, or I've never heard anyone talk about them. Or the dangers of them. So the nurse came back in to tell us, we think it's ectopic, but we interestingly, we don't think it is, because generally when someone comes in with an ectopic, they're like doubled over in agony, pain, throwing up from pain, just like, screaming from pain.
Or they're rushed in.
And you're neither. You're bleeding a lot, but you're not experiencing or showcasing any pain. Even when she was pushing on my abdomen, like no pain, just some cramps. So what happened was they did blood test again, and they saw that my HGC levels were 18,000, which I then learned generally a woman's HGC levels are around like an 8 on any given day. And when you get pregnant, those numbers double every single 48 hours. So that is kind of how they're able to even assume or guess how far along you would be. And so because my HGC levels were 18,000, but I had been bleeding very, very heavily for a lot of hours, they were like, this doesn't match. Your HGC should be dropping if you were miscarrying. At which point they were like, ectopics are really dangerous. And they started explaining to us what could happen. And if they aren't able to remove an ectopic, the only next step is that you rupture. So my ectopic pregnancy, which is what we ended up finding out, was stuck in the fallopian tube. And so after an egg is fertilized by the sperm, it's supposed to get fertilized in the tube and then drop into the uterus. An ectopic pregnancy is typically where it gets stuck in the tube. Occasionally it can end up getting stuck somewhere else, but not in the uterus. So it essentially starts growing. And we were about 5.5, 6 weeks along, and it was growing inside of the tube, which it will get to a place where it'll rupture the tube. If and when your tube ruptures, that is extremely dangerous because you have an opportunity at that point to become septic inside.
Or just bleed out.
And die. When you become septic, that can also cause, obviously, other infections, death. You might need a transfusion, a blood transfusion. They will oftentimes have to remove other organs, ovaries, etc., all of the things. So at that point, they said, we can't tell if it's an ectopic because we can't see that in an ultrasound, but we know you're not pregnant where you're supposed to be pregnant, but we can tell that you're still pregnant. So we have to do surgery. And I think at that moment, we were both like, what? Like, it's Saturday. We're in the middle of lunch. We were supposed to walk the dog and have coffee. What do you mean I have to have surgery?
Yeah, that was for sure a shocker. And this is the part where it really was just like trauma. Very out of body. Yeah. The trauma started. It felt like we were watching our life through
a scary movie.
I don't want to speak for you, but it felt like I was watching through like another lens or something, like where it was this foggy lens of just completely outside of ourselves, outside of myself. And I didn't want to be disrespectful to the OB because at this point we were talking to the doctor and she was lovely. And in a roundabout way, I basically asked if like this was the only option.
Yeah.
Because at that moment, we didn't know the seriousness of what was being told to us. So I asked her for some time. She left the room, and I, fortunately, one of my cousins, I won't use their name, graduated med school recently, and is an OB. So I called her. She didn't answer, of course, because she's a doctor and she's busy. And I texted her and I said, it's an emergency. If you could call me. So she did. Told her what was going on. And, when you just hear it from someone, like and trust, it just changes everything. I explained what was going on. I said, these are Jess's HGC levels. This is what we just went through. This is what's going on. And she's just like, Mike,
you have to let them do surgery. Yeah, that's what she said.
She's like, Mike, you cannot leave that hospital. So.
Well, now I'm going to cry. Yeah. So she said, you have to let them do surgery. At this point, it's not even like it's considered exploratory, but she's like, I've seen so many cases of this. And if you leave and if it ruptures, and here's all the things that could happen. So, I mean, within moments after that, they were prepping me for surgery. And like any surgery, we had to sign off some pretty heavy paperwork of course, I could die, I could need a blood transfusion, and we had to give them rights to remove any and all organs needed, as well as the baby. Which was a really tough piece of paper to sign, because I think, especially as a woman, what I've been feeling, it's like, those are my parts. That's my reproductive system. What do you mean you're going to take that? I understand you're going to save my life, but like, how can you just go in and take that? And of course, if you've ever had surgery, certainly any surgery, but certainly emergency surgery, there's no opportunity for the doctor to like come out to the waiting room and ask your opinion or let you know what's going on. It's they go in, they do what they need to do, and you don't find out until after, as the patient, when you're waking up from anesthesia, or as the loved one in the waiting room, until I'm in the recovery room. And so that's what happened. And, you say you kind of felt like we were watching through another lens. I would agree, but it also was this weird, creepy, like, we happened to be the only people in the emergency room. We were the only people you were the only person in the waiting room.
Well, I was grateful for all that.
I know. I was the only person in the pre-op room where they had multiple beds. But it felt very creepy because I felt like it was like this horror movie. And it was just really, really scary because it was so unplanned. So they wheeled me in. Well, and yeah,
sorry, I think, I want to share about your parents too, because there was so much trauma in this day. Right. But, and this isn't a spin, this is reality. There was so much to be grateful for. The fact that we were in New Jersey, yep, close to your parents, they were able to come. I was able to talk to them because I had no one to talk to, yep, because it's very personal. And like, yeah, we're sharing this on a podcast now, but it was 2 months ago.
Yeah.
I was able to share that with them. Your mom was able to calm me down, which was very helpful because obviously, not being calm in a situation like that is, you can easily spiral. Especially I was alone in the waiting room. It's not like I'm hanging out with the doctor and she's comforting me, and they don't have mental health professionals waiting to talk to you. The other part of it too was being in New Jersey, close to a great hospital, near your parents. They were able to go take care of Montana, our dog, and that was great. Now, the part that was tough was that we hadn't told anyone that we were not trying to have a baby.
Yeah.
So I had to tell them because I didn't want them to think. I didn't want them to think other things.
Yeah.
I didn't want their imagination to wander into things that, whatever, other things, right? So, I remember going back in and you being like, did you tell them? And I was like, no, I didn't yet. I didn't know if you wanted me to. And you're like, well, you have to, because they're going to think other things. And I said, okay.
Yeah.
So I told them, and that was very, very helpful. And then, we went upstairs and it just
wheeled me away.
And that part of it was just really, really strange. And if I could just share the speed at which everything took place that day was very reminiscent of what I went through in 2003 when my mom passed, because that was extremely fast as well. She passed. She'd been fighting cancer for years, but it wasn't one of those situations where she was on hospice or something like that. I was down at college and it was very fast. So we don't need to get into the whole thing, but it was bringing back a lot of memories of the trauma, the same trauma of being, you're in the hospitals. They look the same. They feel the same, very cold, very sterile. We were alone in there. Right. And it was similar that day too, where I was with some family, but it was just like, it was all so fast. And it was kind of like, how did we just get to this? Yeah. The weekend before that, I had just had my like junior ring weekend where it's like a formal and like mom paid for the pictures with my girlfriend at the time. And now we're here. Like, how did we get here? Right. And like for you and I, it was like, we were just walking the dog this morning and drinking coffee on the couch, talking about how awesome day one of Digital Business Evolution Live experience was, and how like we're so excited because we have the most leads we've ever had. And we worked for 6 months and everyone's fired up. And now like I'm kissing your forehead and you're being wheeled in. So that was just, an absolute whirlwind and way too familiar.
Yeah.
So that brought up a lot of weird stuff for me.
Absolutely. And I think when I was in the pre-op room, I started to really understand how serious it was, because the anesthesiologist came in, and generally when you go under anesthesia, full anesthesia, they intubate you, where they put the tube down your throat to, help you breathe and everything. And so you have to fast, which is why before you have an elective surgery, you are told to fast. And so when they asked me when the last time I ate was, and it was only about 3 or 4 hours prior, they were just
maybe even less. We were like pounding coffee.
We were eating pretzels and peanut butter and stuff.
We thought we were going home in an hour.
Yeah. So when they asked and it had only been 3 or 4 hours, they generally have to wait 8, or at least that's what I'm just telling you what the doctors had told me. But they said, it's such an emergency that we have to do it now. We have to intubate you now. We can't wait the 8 hours because you could rupture. And it was like, whoa, it's that serious. It's that time sensitive. I had no idea. So, I go into surgery, take the best nap ever, don't remember anything. And I wake up from anesthesia. And I just remember asking the doctor as soon as I could kind of open my eyes and come to. And my first question was, did you take my tube? And she said, I did. I'm so sorry. And she started to get like teary eyed. I'm sure it's not easy for the doctors to have to report that type of stuff. She said, the good news is we did find the baby, and it was in your right fallopian tube. And the bad news is that we had to remove your right tube. However, that's all we had to remove. And it's something that I want you to focus on because it could have been so much worse. And she just kept saying, you did the right thing by coming in, and we're so grateful you did. And we're so proud that you came in. And of course, my second question was, when can I go to the gym? Because that's my outlet. Really, truly, that's my outlet. And I knew how hard and heavy all of this would be. And so it was a laparoscopic surgery. So I have 3 incisions, one in my belly button, one on my right hip. Yep. And then one on my left hip. The one on my left hip is about an inch wide, a little bit bigger than the other ones. And that's where they actually removed the tube. So even though they removed the right tube, they pulled it out of the left side. And so external stitches, internal stitches, and 6 weeks of no movement or lifting anything above 10 pounds. And as we record this podcast episode, tomorrow will be 6 weeks exactly of post-op, or 2 days from now will be 6 weeks exactly. So still working through that whole process. And then the journey home, we got discharged that night at about 11:30. The journey home was hard. I mean, I was very much sedated, but happy to be going home. And my parents ended up keeping Montana for an entire week. And we can kind of talk about what all that looked like, because the next few days were pretty brutal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was interesting too, being in the waiting room, because, being alone and not texting anyone.
Yeah.
Besides your parents, and which they didn't want to bother me, because it was a very personal thing, and you and I hadn't even had a chance to process or discuss if so I couldn't reach out to my outlets that I normally do, just out of respect for privacy for Jess and for both of us, because I didn't know what the protocol was going to be, right? So that was challenging, and it was tough to hear when the doctor came out and told me what had taken place, but I at the end of the day, all I cared about was that Jess was okay.
Yeah.
And that, she went through the surgery completely, it couldn't have gone better, she basically said, aside from the fact that if she didn't have to remove the tube, but that wasn't really an option at that point. I saw a picture, which was fascinating and brought up other emotions too, because 5.5 weeks doesn't sound like a long time, but when you think about it over a 9-month period, 5.5 weeks is not a small chunk of time. And it was interesting what the picture looked like. Yeah. And it was very interesting. And again, I'm just grateful that you're okay. I'm grateful that it went smoothly, but it's been a long road, since then. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually saved the picture. I have it on my phone because I was so interested in just keeping it as whatever. It's mine. So, it's ours. So I have that picture, and it is crazy to see. And I think the emotional guidance scale that we talk about all the time from Esther Hicks, where the bottom is really grief, and then you move all the way up to the top, level 1 of 22 is gratitude and joy. And generally, when we're working through like a grief or a trauma, we go from very angry and mad to oftentimes like frustrated and resentful. And then you move into like the grief and the sadness, and then you sort of move through the scale. And so for the last month, that's the scale that I've been moving in. And kind of like when you climb the rungs on a ladder. I don't know if you remember the game Chutes and Ladders, but that's how I feel. It's kind of like I climb up a couple and then I slide down one.
I was just going to ask if you feel like, I know it's a scale, but like if you feel like you're going back and forth between anger. Yeah.
And I think you would agree watching me, because the first, 12 days, there was not a day I didn't cry. Also, just I went from being pregnant to not pregnant. So my hormone levels literally were dropping rapidly. So it's supernatural. Plus going through a surgery, and I didn't take any painkillers or anything after, but to go through a surgery and then come off of that and have the physical pain. And I think for me, the physical pain has been a constant reminder of everything. So every time I turn or I twist or I bend, or I'm still not allowed to work out, or my clothing gets snagged, I still have stitches, seatbelts hurt. It's kind of like a physical reminder that jolts me back into the reality of actually what happened. And then it triggers the emotional response. And so, we can talk about obviously the post-op recovery. It was a lot of laying around on the couch for that weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Sunday, I didn't get off the couch. I watched a lot of really, really terrible dance movies.
We didn't know there was that many dance movies. And and listen, being married to Jess, she loves dance. She used to take dance classes. She's like, a raver in her old life. I've seen a lot of dance movies. Okay. I don't think we both realized
how many good team versus bad team there could be.
Yeah. There's like 20 dance movies. It's insane. And then we eventually got to the ones that were, the lips are moving. You could tell it was in another language, but English is coming out. And it was like those
D-list.
Yeah. I'm like, what? Like, where was this one made? This is interesting.
Yeah. So it was a lot of that. But then what ended up happening was, we were in launch. we were 2 days into a 12-day experience. And so the conversation came up of, what do you want to do? And for the record, there was zero pressure from any of the team members to continue with launch. And it ultimately was my sort of final decision because I was the one who was going to be presenting. And so I decided to move forward with the launch. We were so excited. The work we had done, the people that were in the container, in the room, the excitement level that they had. And I think for me, and you can judge all you want, but it was like a healthy level of distraction and a moment of sort of suppression so that I could go back into the healing, but not just have to sit in the healing the whole time. And it's purpose for me, and it's exciting, and it's just so fun. And I get fulfilled and lit up getting to coach and serve and teach. And so we decided to move forward with the launch. And that's where it really started to feel like Instagram versus reality, because even on those live trainings, the majority of them were filmed from my chest up, and I would have on like a cute shirt and a hat and earrings and makeup. But from the chest waist down, I had on these high-waisted oversized sweatpants for like 10 days in a row with basically a diaper and bandages on my stomach and, gauze and everything. And so it just felt very much like Instagram versus reality, because I would come on, I would present, and then when I would finish, I would go right back to the couch and I would just lay there watching really quality dance movies.
Yeah. Yeah. And be very emotional.
Very emotional.
Yeah.
A lot of crying.
Couple points about this in terms of the launch. I'm glad you brought up the launch, because we were really excited and there was momentum that we felt. But aside from the distraction, one of the things that we talked about too was a big part of it was the question was, okay, you want to launch still. How are we going to do this?
Yeah.
So one of the things that we continuously talk about, especially you, because you're forward facing on Instagram, is the machine, building the machine, building the machine. And I'll be honest here. There's times where we've questioned, have we built the machine just as such a face on Instagram? We do rely heavily on organic. We love organic because we really feel like it's just such a great way to build know, like, and trust with like an audience. And that's the way you kind of came up in this industry too. So we were like, what's it going to look like if we say, what's it going to look like if you do step away? So, Lauren and I were having conversations, and we were like, all right, there's so many things we can do. We actually can get through this entire launch without Jess. And I think that was something that we were very proud of.
Yeah.
You didn't want to do our plans, which were recorded videos and still leveraging team members and coaches that we have, because we have some amazing people in our network to kind of come in and deliver some of the in-between stuff of the Digital Business Live experience, right? You wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Which I think speaks to a couple of things, right? It does speak to that you were excited about how many people that we were able to kind of bring into this free experience. And also it spoke to just like how that's what you wanted to do. And we respected that. We wanted to respect how you felt. And I know, I can't even imagine how challenging it was for you, but I know it was challenging. But man, did you show up? And it was so cool to see you still do that. But the machine worked, which was a really, really cool experience.
Yeah, it was incredible.
And it allowed, I'm not going to speak for the rest of the team, but it definitely allowed me to step into something that I haven't had to step into in the company.
Yeah.
Way more involvement in pieces of the business that just didn't have to.
Yeah.
Because, maybe you had your hands in them still.
Yeah.
In certain decisions. So it was an interesting test, to say the least.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it so many times. I would have enjoyed being shown the machine in a different way.
Correct.
But to be shown that we have built a machine was incredible. And when we talk about that, it's so many things. It's not just systems and automations, but it can be simple things too. Like we were hosting this live experience and we have, 30 emails that are going to go out over the course of a couple of weeks. And to see that every single email was set up ahead of time and tagged appropriately, and everything was automated and scheduled, and posts in the Facebook group had been scheduled ahead of time, and team members knew exactly what they were doing. And the team was hosting meetings and daily sprint meetings that I was never a part of, where you weren't just checking in with each other, but you were ideating, you were creating things on the fly, you were pivoting, you were coming up with ideas of, okay, if Jess is not going to show up live, what can we do? How could we do it? And so it really was incredible to see sort of everyone working together. And very quickly in that experience, we did also tell our coaches and we let them know what was going on, and for them to have our back and offer out, whether it was helping on calls or doing lives, whatever it might be. It really was just such a beautiful showcasing of this machine that we have built and this team that we've built and the culture that we've built. And yeah, I got to show
the importance of team and culture too.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, yeah, we've built it, and it's been, look, there's times where it's been really rocky. We've had some tough conversations with probably everyone that's involved in what we've built. And, but yeah, everybody stepped up. I mean, it was just so awesome to see and get the messages from, people like Nick and Mary and Brad and everyone else, and their involvement and the level of that they did step up. The other piece, though, that when challenges like this come up, it does expose,
shines a light.
It shines a very, very bright light on weak points,
leaks, holes.
Yeah, exactly. And those are some things that we're definitely working on, and we can share those probably in future episodes. But it's interesting when your back's against the wall, you're able to see what you're able to accomplish, but you're also able to see what you maybe aren't able to accomplish. And a lot of those leaks and holes in the business, and it also shines a light on some people's characters, things like that. So all sorts of different things that, look, bad things are going to happen, and I'm definitely not downplaying the situation.
Yeah.
But what happens after is how you move forward. Yeah. It's like, I don't believe that this happened for a reason. I know there's people that believe those things. I don't believe that this was like, I'm going to make this happen to them so that they learn this particular lesson. But I believe that there always is a lesson that can be taken from every situation, no matter how good or bad.
Yeah.
And we certainly learned a lot of lessons, and it really brought into a lot of perspective and things into perspective, and how much we need to get back to practicing gratitude, and back to the business, a lot of the holes that we need to plug up on a well-run machine, but a machine that can run better and be more efficiently.
Yeah.
And run more efficiently.
Yeah. The interesting thing about the lessons too, and I've been in this space now for a month of wanting to know what the lessons are now. I need to know what they are now. I need to make meaning out of this, because that's what humans do. And when something doesn't make sense, something doesn't feel fair, something doesn't feel deserved, you go into the spiral of what does this mean? Why did this happen? What am I supposed to learn? What am I supposed to create from this? What am I supposed to take from this? And I think one of my biggest lessons thus far, and it still very much is a scab. This is not a scar yet. Right. I think it'll be a long time before this is a scar. I don't know that it will ever be, but one of the lessons that I have learned already is that trust and that surrender to I might not know, and I might not ever have a clear understanding of why it happened. And I also don't have to make it mean something. I don't have to turn it into something. I don't need to go pivot our entire business to start becoming an advocate and teaching something about ectopic pregnancies, right? It doesn't need to be this big message that's coming down to change our entire life, but it certainly has changed my life. And taking it one day at a time. And the past 10 days have been really great for me. I think I made it about almost 10 days without crying, without feeling really down or confused or angry or frustrated. And last night I was hysterical crying in bed for 2 hours.
And I want to just say, because we've talked about this, and this kind of goes to my perspective of watching you go through this. And obviously I've gone through it, a part of it as well, Absolutely. Being your partner, and but completely different, right? You're okay with the fact that you've spent almost every day crying, right? And I know what you mean by this. You don't, but the fact that you're not now every day, that's okay too.
Yeah.
And for me, the really big thing that was we learn all these things with personal development. And, I think back to a conversation that happened with one of my really good friends. And it was the day before that we went to the ER, and we didn't know what was happening, but I shared with this particular individual some of the details of what was happening on that Friday, because I know that this person had a lot of experience with at that time what we thought was happening. And man, the advice couldn't have come at a better time, because the advice was, you're not going to understand. Don't try to fix the problem. As a man, you're going to want to try to fix the problem for your spouse, right? For Jess. And man, that advice couldn't have come at a better time, because I didn't know what you were going through, and I was just there to listen. Mm-hmm. And if I hadn't got that advice, I would have probably tried to give advice, and my intentions would have been good. Yeah. But man, there hasn't been a bigger time in our life together where you've just needed me to just listen. Yeah. Just listen. Obviously pick up heavy things for you physically, but
which is really hard for me to give up.
Yeah. But pick things up, put them down. But from an emotional standpoint, it was just listen. And that's challenging, because really I always want to try to I feel responsible for things, and I always want to try to be the one to fix it and to help and to solve and this, that, and the other thing. And this really tested my patience with that, and my, I guess, is emotional intelligence the right words for that? And I certainly tried my best with that, to just listen. I mean, even last night when you were very upset last night. Yeah. And also, candidly, there's times where it's I don't understand what you're going through. So it's natural. I don't want to say it's natural, right? I've felt frustrated at times, not at you. Yeah. Frustrated with the situation, because not only can I not fix it, I also don't know what you're experiencing. Yeah. But I just have to be there and listen. Right. So,
well, I mean, you've done an incredible job of that. And there's a couple things that I want to say. Number one, I think for anyone listening, if you are listening, like Mike is saying, we can all take this advice, whether it's for a client, a friend, a loved one. We all tend to overcoach. We all tend to give unsolicited advice, because that's how we feel as humans, that we can connect with someone else, right? It's ooh, this person is hurting or they're struggling, so I need to come up with a solution, where a lot of times people just need someone else to hold space. And so I think we can all take something away from that. I know in the coaching industry, especially, this is your permission to not always have the answer, because your client isn't even asking sometimes for an answer. Sometimes they're just venting. And really, I think for me over the years, coaching for so many years, I now ask if someone wants advice, if they want my opinion. And so I think our life in this world of coaching has also reflected how you've reacted to everything. And I see the two going hand in hand, and you've just done an incredible job. And then the other point that I want to bring up, and, we both have said this traumatic experience brought us closer together, and it had me kind of fall in love with you in a different way that I didn't even know was available, because I already love you so much, and you're, my best friend and all these things. But it's wow, there was just this whole other level of appreciation for one another, and for how much we care for one another, and the life that we're building together. And so that's been really beautiful to go through as well. Again, would have loved to have seen it in a different way, but I don't know that we could have.
Well, again, talking about lessons that we can take from things. Thank you for what you just said first, but talking about lessons that you can take from things. The biggest lesson too is just, goddamn, life is so good, right? And things can just change so fast in an instant, an instant. Yeah. And, we have these phrases, tomorrow's not guaranteed. But it's almost, without practice, it's almost not possible to truly embody and feel that emotion without a lot of practice. And this is why it is important. And I need my own advice, what I'm about to say, unless you go through something traumatic. Yeah. So it's man, Mike, Jess, don't let another traumatic event have to happen to appreciate so many beautiful things in your life. Right. Yeah. And what's wild is we do appreciate so much in our life, and we do practice gratitude, but not hard enough, in my opinion. Yeah. But
you can bring that down the scale. And it's we've all felt when you have a cold and your nose is
Totally.
stuffy and you're like, I just
The
wish I
first
could
day
breathe.
you feel good,
And
you're like,
but
oh
you,
my God, I feel like Superman.
yeah. And you look around, you're like, it's not fair. Why can everybody else breathe? I swear, when I just feel better, I'll be so grateful. I promise I'll never take for granted again feeling good. And that first day you feel good, you're like, I feel amazing. I'm so
Right.
grateful. And 3 days later, you're not practicing that gratitude because it's your baseline.
Yeah.
Healthy, right? For a lot of us, like that, not having a stuffy nose might be your baseline, or fill in the blank, not having an ear infection, not having to wear a cast because you broke your leg, like whatever it is.
It's so easy to spiral,
It's so
though.
easy to just go back into like, well, this is how it's supposed to be. This is just how
Exactly.
it is. And I think that's practicing presence, and it's truly being present in the moment. And that's what for years we've both been practicing with meditation, with breath work,
Not enough,
personal
though.
development. We can always do more. And so it's shining a light on some of the leaks, right? And it's not just in the business, but it's in our lives too. And so, hopefully we don't have an episode like this 3 years down the road where we're like, oh man, the universe smacked us upside the head again and we weren't practicing presence and gratitude. So, we can take from this experience whatever we choose to. And we clearly can talk about this for a while. We have lots to say, and I appreciate you if you're still sticking around. It has been a long episode. One that for me, while it's only been a month, it feels like one that's been like waiting to come out, because I've always been transparent with my audience. And there are so many things around that too, even going back to what I was saying earlier, like I haven't cried in so many days. For the record, it's not a goal for me to not cry.
Yeah,
it's not.
That's what I was trying to clarify.
I'm not trying to like put on armor where crying is bad. It's very much the opposite. So
feel the emotion.
Feel the emotions and without judgment. I mean, I really do truly believe if you keep that stuff in, it causes dis-ease, which can literally cause sickness and disease, and whether it's cancer and tumors and whatever it is. So releasing that stuff. I mean, one of the first text messages I sent out after the surgery on Sunday morning was to a therapist. And I asked to book an appointment so I could get ahead, knowing that this is going to be a challenging road and everyone's healing journey looks very different. And it's not a rush to get to the finish line. And I don't know that I'll ever be over it. And I'm not trying to be over it. But I also don't want it to become my identity, right? It's just something that happened to me. It's not me.
Yeah. And just to circle back to the Instagram versus reality. And I know you pride yourself on this, and we both do. We pride ourselves on, we are who we are on the camera, off the camera, in person. And this wasn't the last couple months haven't been this facade. It's been more so, if anything, you've barely shown up the way you normally have on Instagram, myself included. And we wanted to share this on the podcast because like there's so many reasons why people need to hear about these things, because it's not talked about enough. And I didn't get a chance to make this point earlier, so if it's okay, I'd like to.
Yeah.
I assumed as a man I didn't know enough about this because I'm a man, but the more I talk to people, the more I realize that I would say most of the people I've spoken to were not aware of the severity.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because this is something that's not talked about, is not that uncommon. It's not, we're not talking about like, it's like a 1% type of thing, right? That's not that uncommon though. I mean, I know it is in the medical world, but like when you think about 1% of pregnancies, 1 to 3% or something like that, I don't know. Look, don't quote me. Those are some of the things that I read. Like that's still enough where it's like, man, we all have a lot of people we're connected to. How many people do we know that have experienced this? Why aren't people talking about this? Because then if no one's talking about it, and I know that we've felt this alone.
Very alone.
Like
broken, like something's wrong.
Right. And obviously I can't relate to that part of it, but I certainly can relate to like having to explain what happened. And then you fall into this, like, I don't want them to think I'm explaining it to this level so that I went fishing and the fish was, 5 inches, but I said it was 2 feet. It's like, no, this is like really what happened. And it was really this scary. And it was really this dangerous, So, the loneliness part and the Instagram versus reality took place, just so that we could, again, so that it wasn't so much of an open wound and it was it was more of a scab, and we'll continue to both grow and run our own journey. But we wanted to bring it to the podcast, to really connect the dots between our life and our business, but also talk a little bit about what we've been going through. And the last thing I'll say is just, there's been some people that I think it's natural for people to obviously reach out to you. And I certainly don't mean this in the sense that I am requesting people to reach out, but it's meant a lot to people who have reached out, especially the people that are more so in your friend circle, your business circle, less about mine, because there's been some people that have reached out that I don't know as well. And they've said, look, I know you're going through this too. And that meant a lot.
Yeah. It's crazy to witness how many people actually don't ask you how you are, or don't ask me how you are. And again, it's not to say come DM me and ask how Mike is. I mean, you're more than welcome, but we're not
against them. It's more so that people
don't realize,
don't know to.
Yeah, they don't know to. They don't realize that it's been so hard for you too, for so many different reasons. And I kind of want to just close this episode out by saying, permission as always to do things how you want to do things. So just because I chose to launch doesn't mean you need to launch. Just because I decided to, yes, I've taken a break. It's October 27th. I haven't hard posted since September 30th. And in 9 years, I don't think I've ever missed more than 3 days of not posting.
No. And the only time you did was maybe a holiday.
I think our wedding. Wedding, I missed it.
Because you like it.
So I haven't hard posted in a month. I have been on stories, but I've barely shown my face. And if you were to look through a different lens and you could go backwards on my stories, the majority of what I've posted over the last month has been outward facing pictures of what's around me, or pictures that have been previously taken, inanimate objects like my coffee, and I'll write on the screen, but I haven't really spoken to camera much at all over the last month. So just permission to move through your own healing process, your own trauma, your own life, the way that you want, permission to show up or not show up, however you feel, permission to listen to your intuition and discern what you feel is right for you. It's not a competition. It's not a show. There's no prize. There's no ribbon. And, I just appreciate you being a part of our journey. I also do want to open the invitation. If you do feel alone, if you are going through something, one of the reasons we are sharing this is so that you don't feel that way. And I'm always open to DMs. You do not need to DM me. You don't need to share what you're going through. But the more that I've shared off of Instagram in my real life, when I'm seeing people, meeting people at events and stuff, the more I'm finding out, wow, there actually are more people that have gone through similar things. To your point of the 1%, I think everything I Googled, it's miscarriages come up 1 in 3 pregnancies, not women, and ectopics come up either 1 in 80 or 1 in 100 pregnancies. So to your point,
1 to 3%.
It's how many people do we all know, and how many times have they tried to get pregnant, and then how many times could that be ectopic or a miscarriage or IVF or something else? So you don't need to share what you don't want to share, but certainly we would like to be just a light and leaders in the space of, I don't feel shame around it. I don't think it should be taboo. And the more that I talk about it, I think as a projector, the more that I'm healing myself. So I appreciate the space for you allowing Mike and I to do that.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate you all. And again, appreciate everyone that's reached out, friends and people that I barely knew. Really appreciate you.
Yeah. So this Truth Behind the Camera is a 3-part series. Part 1 is all about the story of what happened. Part 2, I've actually already recorded, and it's about some crazy spiritual and universal things that have been happening the last month that I'd love to share with you. And then part 3, Mike and I are coming back together to share some of the actual kind of tactical lessons and takeaways that we have from everything and how we've continued to run the business. So as always, if you love this episode, take a screenshot. Please share me at I am Jessica DeRose and Mike.DeRose. You could tag us, let us know your takeaways or shoot us a DM. I hope that you found this episode valuable, and I appreciate you for sticking around so long. As always, cheers to your evolution.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.